Masa al-khair, hello and welcome to the third edition of FuckUp Nights. A big round of applause for having you all here. Woohoo! And we have an amazing speakers line, and here we go. It's complicated, commitment issues. What's that gonna sound like? So Sami Abou Saab is the CEO at Speed at BDD. By the way, it's the first ecosystem-backed startup accelerator. Their first demo, their first graduation or team just graduated yesterday. They're all over the media right now. Pretty pumped up about that. Awesome startups. You should check out their startups. Sami has over 10 years of experience in tech, both in startups and firms. Before Speed at BDD, he worked with Microsoft and Skype in the US, covering strategy, marketing, and channel modeling. He also worked at Data Consult, where he led a systems department in Lebanon in the Middle East and grew the business eightfold. So it sounds like he knows what he's doing. Let's hear it from Sami Abou Saab.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I know what I'm doing, but let's see. So it all started back in 2008. And like everyone, you want to go pursue your American dream. Back then, I didn't have the financial means to do so. So I was like, okay, how am I going to do my MBA in the US? I applied for the Fulbright. Well, they didn't get me the first year. They said, no, like, that's not a good application. Maybe come back later on. Spent a full year trying to figure out how am I going to go and do my MBA. My financial means didn't really progress that year, so I applied again the year after. But this time around, I actually became the first MBA ever to be accepted in Fulbright from Lebanon. So went through the process, trying to choose the university I want to apply to, and obviously you want to go from Lebanon to the US, you want to go to a top school, you're not going to go like to anyone. So I said like, oh, I want to go to Berkeley, Columbia, Stanford, Harvard, you name it. They're like, oh, you can only apply, these guys. So you can only apply to Berkeley and Columbia. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to apply to those. I applied to Berkeley, got 50% merit scholarship, and got accepted there. They're like, and then they're like, oh, why don't you apply to University of Oregon? Maybe you get 100% merit. I was like, no, I'm not going to go hang out with those folks. Like, sorry guys, I got Berkeley, I'm going to go there. And then at some point, they were like, okay, you're making the process so difficult for us. Like, you're going to go for 2 years to Berkeley. You're going to cost us a lot of money. Instead of you can send actually 3 other people. We're not going to send you there. Okay, fine. They didn't give me the money. Like, literally, nothing. So the guy who interviewed me happened to be the director of admissions. I contacted the guy like, hey, I really want to come. But given the difference of standards of living between Lebanon and the US, salaries here and there, it's kind of tough. Can you help me somewhere? He said, okay, maybe you should apply to an MBA grant and we see what you can do. Applied to the grant and my 50% actually got extended to 80%. Meaning in the 2 years at Berkeley, I paid less than a year at AUB, like literally. So that tells you a little bit how I made it there. Now, going to Berkeley, and you know, there are some people like this guy, maybe some of you have heard of Steve Blank, he's there. You should end up at some point doing something around entrepreneurship. So second year there, I decided to take that class. And we go into the class, we start building our teams. It happens a little bit in a kind of rational way there. It's not like, oh, like, let's bring my team and do it. So they do a matrix, what kind of skills you have, and also what industries you want to focus on. And we formed a team of 4 people, and we started working on actually a very cool idea back then. So that's actually a slide from our pitch deck. This is an actual slide from the pitch deck. And we're disrupting the locking industry. So we're doing something called UniKey, and it's a unique way to actually lock and unlock the doors using your mobile phone kind of technology and NFC. So we worked on that the full semester, full year, and actually finished the project. We did the final pitch, and we were voted the best in the entrepreneurship class in Berkeley. That's like Silicon Valley dream. And the VCs came to us like, hey, you guys should pursue this. You have a big market, big story there. Okay, great. We finished the class. I graduated in May 19, 2012. And then our advisor started talking to us, you guys should go to the VCs. And it was getting that real. Like, big money on the table. You should go meet the VCs and do all you can for you actually to pursue your dream and get that kind of startup up and running. At some point, our advisors come to us like, hey guys, I need to have a meeting with you before actually setting up those important meetings with the VCs. We're like, okay, cool. We go meet the guy. We're a team of 4. Like, how about you guys gonna commit for the next 2 years? Like, are you guys willing to do so? Personally, I was willing. Another teammate was willing. But then some red flags starting coming up. Like, one of our teammates actually was having another startup. I couldn't stretch herself into 2 startups. And the 4th one was working for a VC and had a contract to go back there. So she was doing the class just for the experience of what an entrepreneur goes through before she goes back to the VC and gives money to actual entrepreneurs. So with half the team, you probably have less than half the credibility. So we actually dropped it. Left the US, 6 June, came back to spend my vacation before I go back to Skype. And then a couple of weeks in Lebanon, I received this email from a friend of mine that a company with the same name as ours raised $1.1 million. Yes, it was that bad. Still, the entrepreneurship flame and startup thing in me didn't die. It's here. And I was looking for the right match. Spent 3 years at Skype still looking for the right match. And guess what? What was the match? Exactly, here you go. So back in June, came back to Lebanon and started working with Speed. But what was the lesson learned and what do we focus on there? Like, if you see in our application and everything we do, we always ask about the team and the team commitment. This is number 1. Don't mess up with the team commitment or the team. Like, this is something you have to have for your startup to work. And that's actually was the missing ingredient for us not to do it. So with that, there is actually a loop that happened in my life. So I went to Silicon Valley, did Skype, and then came back. And this is actually an article that came out today. This is fresh out of the news. So yesterday in our demo day, we actually announced also that we're sending 2 startups back where? To Silicon Valley. American dream again, right? So this is kind of the loop of how things progressed and went back. And in life in general, like, I've come to notice something that happens with time. Like, always things move around and come around, and you're not always sure why they're happening. So they say everything happens for a reason. It's always maybe sometimes nice to know what's the reason. The problem is that you don't always know right away what's the reason. Sometimes you fuck up something and you don't know what happened. It just happened and you know why. You try to think it very thoroughly, you don't discover the reason. But when you give it some time and think about it and like give time its own pace, at some point things come together and you actually end up at the right place, at the right moment, at the best scenario. And this is kind of, I think, of what I've been learning through everything I've been through. Like, I've obviously done a lot of fuck-ups. I've been through many things. And it's always that the right things happen at the right moment for the right reason. Don't try to push things and try to know the reason right away. You're never going to know it on time. It's going to take some time for it to show up. So that's a little bit kind of my story. And that was my fuck-up.
Thank you, Sami. That was great. We open the platform now for some Q&A. If anyone has any questions for Sami. By show of hands, we have Haneen here helping with collaboration. Any questions?
How did that happen? Like the person, how did it feel, you know, seeing the Uniki?
Yeah. So,
wow.
Yeah, I didn't maybe have the time to go through that. We had to do 40 seconds per slide. Exactly. So that happened. So when I received that email, it's like the shock of your life. Like, you were there, you had all the traction, all the VCs were listening to you and like, please come to us to give you the money, and you just had to drop it because the team wasn't committing. And when you receive it, it was a big shock, like, shit, I could have got that money myself and went for the startup. We had a good team, we had really great advisors, people who were ready to develop the product. When it happened, like, it was sad, like, you just feel really bad about it, but at the same time, you have to absorb it and see, like, a little bit, maybe, the bigger picture. So, we're 2 internationals left on the team. If we even want to go pursue it as 2 people out of 4, we'd need to have some American co-founder to support us and move forward. So, it was almost impossible for us to pursue that thing in any possible way. You absorb it, you say, okay, this didn't happen now, maybe it's for a good reason. You know that 1 out of 1,000 startups maybe makes it big. So you try to look at that side of the business. Like maybe I was going to be one of the 999. So you try to look at the positive side. I didn't go that route. It didn't happen right now. Maybe some point later in my life. And you move on. And then after 3 years, you find out yourself back in the startup ecosystem. That's kind of what happened.
So no regrets?
No regrets.
Any other questions?
I'm wondering, after you got the email and received the news that the startup had become successful for the other company, did you receive any information or any contact from the other 2 team members who dropped out of the project initially?
Who got what?
Who dropped out of the project initially?
I actually did send it to them. That's what happened. I'm like, guys, just FYI.
You didn't pursue the idea just because you were 2, or just, I mean, just because you were international students, or?
So it's a combination of factors. First, you lost half of your team. So if you're going to go to a VC and talk to them about something you're building with another 2 people and they're out of the team, they're really going to have a hard time giving you credibility that half of the team is going to actually be able to pursue this and continue with it. Like, if they're looking at you as a team of 4 and you suddenly are 2, they're not going to really get that credibility. Even our advisor said, like, okay, you guys maybe have to drop it now. Like, even if 2 of you are going to pursue it, it's probably not going to get the same traction anymore. That was one. Second, I think reason is, yeah, definitely you being in the US as an international and wanting to pursue a startup, you have to have some backing, either backing. So like either a VC has to support you, to support your visa, or it has to be some co-founder who's American and then you found a company that can actually give you that envelope. So the amount of risks gets multiplied suddenly by 10. If you are taking a risk at just being an entrepreneur is one thing, taking a risk as an international being an entrepreneur is another thing, and then now you have half of the team and being international and taking that risk. So like, okay, maybe I should minimize a little bit my risk somewhere.
You didn't look for another like other teammates or something? Or
we did, but you're limited in time. So when you finish any education in the US, you have up to 10 months as like some leeway to pursue something and do it. But in that time, I had also a deadline whether I want to pursue the Skype job or not. So what do? Like, you don't have anything at hand here, and you have a good job there. Like, it's not a bad job to work for Skype, to be honest. Like, it was a great experience as well. So, okay, I said, maybe it's not going to happen at this stage of my life. Let me go a little bit on a safer route. I'm not a huge risk taker, by the way. Like, even though I pursued this, I'm not a huge risk taker by nature. So that was already too risky what I was doing. So even taking the next step in that was maybe even bigger. But at the same time, I don't regret not doing that, because if I were to do it and then it was going to fail, I would have probably lost on both sides. Like, the startup wouldn't have started, the Skype thing, I would have lost it. Getting it back is a very competitive market, especially that in the US, out of college, it's easy to find a job, but if you wait a little bit of time, it becomes impossible. Because they work in cycles and they work in certain momentum. To catch up later on the cycle, it becomes like 1 out of 100 opportunities that are valid for you instead of many more.
Yeah. Thank you.
We have one question here and then one question here, and then we have to go over the
So what's the most valuable advice that was an aha moment for you that you ever got from Steve Blank?
Oh, wow. So many aha moments from Steve Blank. I don't know where to start. I think Steve Blank is not traditional in his thinking in general. So always you get from him stuff that are kind of shock people or make them think a little bit that, oh, I shouldn't be sticking to the traditional, typical stuff that I do in life. I think the aha moment I got from Steve Blank was mostly around like, he's a little bit against business plans and against all these kind of traditional things. He thinks that all business plans that have 5-year projections are worth nothing. And if you actually talk to investment bankers and to VCs, they tell you that 99% of the times, the business plans do not get executed as planned. So he kind of trashes the business plan, tells you like, this is not needed, don't waste your time on it, it's not going to go anywhere. I think that's something I kind of started to adopt in my mindset, even though I cannot fully push it on startups. The reason being that investors in the traditional market still look for those. So I think my learning that when you're doing a startup and you're putting a 5-year plan, this is just something that you're putting on paper for you to get some credibility that you did your due diligence, you did your work, but don't expect that this is actually what's going to happen. Like, be open that this is just something that you have to do, and it's good homework that you have to revise time after time, time after time. But it never actually gets executed the way you write it. This never happens.
Thank you, Sami. Great talk.